Please, I just need a dad for the father-daughter dance. The words hit him like a crack of thunder. James Bennett stopped mid-step as his eyes locked onto the small figure standing at the edge of Monroe Park. She wore a powder-pink dress, the kind that sparkled faintly in the sunlight, like a costume from a fairy tale. Her hair was tied into neat braids, and the shoes on her feet were too scuffed for such a delicate occasion. But it was the sign in her hands that took his breath away. Need a dad for the father-daughter dance. It was written in marker on cardboard, and though the handwriting was careful, some letters drooped as if tired from holding up hope for too long. She stood still, just by the park gate where foot traffic was heavy, where busy lives bustled past without looking, and no one stopped. Not one. James felt a sharp ache in his chest. He took a slow breath and stepped off the path, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel as he walked toward her. With each step, his composure cracked. The closer he got, the clearer he saw the tears already sliding down her cheeks. She didn't flinch when he approached. She just looked up, eyes wide, silent, brimming with something too heavy for her small shoulders. James knelt beside her, careful not to startle. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked gently. "Anna," she replied, barely above a whisper. "Anna." He paused, voice catching in his throat. "Why are you here all alone?" "I live with my mom. She works at the diner all day. I asked her if I could try, just for today. She said I could come to the park. Maybe someone would see me." Her lips trembled. "I've never met my dad, not even once." James felt something twist deep inside him. A wound he'd buried beneath wealth and decades of ambition began to bleed again. He saw flashes of his own childhood, trailing behind his mother from one shelter to the next, wondering why his father never came. "You don't know who he is?" he asked softly. Anna shook her head. "Mama said he didn't want to stay, that he left before I could talk." He didn't realize he was crying until her eyes widened, surprised. "You okay, mister?" she asked, touching his sleeve. James choked on the lump in his throat. "No," he said. "No, I'm not. I grew up without a dad, too. I know how that feels." Then, suddenly, without meaning to, he pulled her into his arms. She was light, fragile, trembling. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice cracking. "It's okay now. You're not alone. You have a dad now. If this moment touched your heart the way it touched his, take a second to let us know. Tell us what you're feeling in the comments. Hit like if you believe every child deserves a moment like this, and if you haven't already, subscribe to follow more stories that speak to the soul, right here, where you're watching." Anna stiffened, then slowly relaxed in his embrace. Across the park, people began to stop. A few pedestrians paused, watching the man in the suit kneeling in the dirt with a child in his arms. Phones came out one flash, then another. A couple whispered as they passed. "Is that James Bennett?" one woman asked. "No way. That's him, the real estate guy. What's he doing hugging a kid in the park? I heard he's launching some foundation. Probably another PR stunt." But James didn't hear them. He held Anna tightly, letting the sobs rise, unguarded. For once, there were no speeches, no cameras he posed for, no filters or headlines, just pain-pure and Rwand, the overwhelming love he hadn't known he still had to give. Anna sniffled against his shoulder. "You really mean it?" she asked. "You'll go to the dance with me?" He pulled back to look at her, both their faces stained with tears. "Sweetheart," he said, voice trembling, "I'd be honored." And in that moment, surrounded by whispers and suspicion, James Bennett stopped being a billionaire, a businessman, or a headline. He became Anna's dad. The hotel suite was silent, but James Bennett couldn't sleep. He sat on the edge of the king-sized bed, elbows resting on his knees, still wearing the same navy suit he had knelt in just hours earlier. His phone buzzed beside him, texts, emails, missed calls, but he ignored them all. His world, once dictated by stock prices and board meetings, had narrowed into the soft voice of a little girl named Anna, and the quiet crack her words had left in his chest. He stood and walked to the window. The skyline of the small town blinked dimly in the distance, so different from the piercing brilliance of Chicago. Here, everything felt slower, simpler, more human. James reached into his wallet and pulled out an old photo, frayed around the edges. A girl with bright eyes and a toothy smile stared back at him, wearing a tutu and holding a plastic tiara. Ava, age 6. The picture was faded, but the memory was sharp. She had begged him to come to her recital. He had promised. But the meeting had run late. And then came the accident. His chest tightened. The grief was no longer sharp, but it lived in him like an old scare-itching, only when touched. And today, Anna had touched it. He thought of her words again. "You really mean it? You'll go to the dance with me?" The trembling in her voice, the disbelief, the hope. God, that hope. James walked over to the small writing desk and sat down. He opened his laptop and searched. Father-daughter dance, Monroe Elementary. The event was listed at the top Saturday evening, 2 days from now. Open to students K through 5. Ticket required. Chaperone must be legal, guardian, or parent. His heart sank. He wasn't Anna's father, not in the way the school expected. Would they allow it? Would they turn her away? The thought of her standing there alone, dressed in that sparkly blue gown, holding his hand only to be told Noe couldn't bear it. He slammed the laptop shut. Morning light crept through the blinds as James finally lay down, shoes still on, staring at the ceiling. At some point, sleep claimed him, though it brought no rest. Later that day, James returned to Monroe Park. The air was different, brighter, filled with chatter and movement, but the bench where Anna had stood was empty. He looked around, heart sinking, until he spotted a familiar face near the food truck. Nurse Johnson. "Looking for someone?" she asked, raising a knowing eyebrow. "Anna," James said. "I told her I'd come back. I need to find her." Johnson nodded and motioned down the block. "Her mom works at Rosie's Diner, double shifts most days. Anna sometimes waits inside with coloring books. Booth near the window." James thanked her and walked quickly. Rosie's was the kind of place he remembered from his childhood. Chrome, trimmed, coffee, scented, with vinyl seats that squeaked when you moved. Inside, behind the counter, a tired woman in a faded apron moved with practiced speed. Her eyes were the same deep brown as Anna's. And there at the booth by the window was Anna. She lit up when she saw him. "You came," she whispered, beaming. "I told you I would," James replied, sliding into the seat across from her. Amanda, Anna's mother, noticed. She wiped her hands on her apron and approached cautiously. "Can I help you?" James stood. "I'm James Bennett. I met your daughter yesterday, in the park." Amanda stiffened slightly. "I see. She told me someone talked to her, but she said you were kind." "I want to take her to the dance," James said plainly. Amanda looked stunned. "The father-daughter dance?" she asked. I said yes. Amanda folded her arms, unsure. "I'm not ungrateful, but we don't know you, and Anna's fragile. She doesn't get her hopes up like that unless she really believes." "I lost my daughter," James said, his voice cracking, "years ago, and I've spent every day since pretending I was okay. But I saw Anna, and she reminded me what I lost. I don't want anything from her, or from you. I just want to be there, just one dance." Amanda softened, the tension in her shoulders easing. "She hasn't stopped talking about you since yesterday." James smiled gently at Anna, who was now coloring in a princess with bright blue crayon. "Do you think the school would even allow it?" Amanda sighed. "They've got rules, but I'll talk to Miss Ellison, the principal. She's got a heart. If anyone can bend them, she can. I'll cover any fees. Donate if needed." Amanda shook her head. "It's not about the money, Mr. Bennett." James nodded. "I know." Before he left, Anna grabbed his hand. "I'm going to wear my sparkly dress, the one with the silver ribbon." James squeezed her tiny fingers. "I'll wear my best suit. Deal?" She grinned and nodded. As he stepped outside, the wind ruffled his coat. For the first time in years, he felt light, unsure, hopeful. The past couldn't be undone, but maybe, just maybe, it could be redeemed. One slow dance at a time. The next morning, James stood on the steps of Monroe Elementary School, heart pounding in a way he hadn't felt since he closed his first real estate deal 3 decades ago. But this wasn't a negotiation over buildings or land. This was about a little girl in a sparkly blue dress, a promise made, and the weight of everything he'd failed to protect in the past. The school was Modesta, red brick structure with a faded American flag flapping gently above the front entrance. Children's laughter echoed across the yard, and staff moved in and out, clutching clipboards and coffee mugs. It was all so ordinary, and that made it all the more sacred. He stepped inside and introduced himself to the receptionist, a brisk woman with silver hair and square glasses. "I have a 10:15 appointment with Principal Ellison," James said. "Yes, Mr. Bennett. She's expecting you. Right this way." The office was cozy, with a shelf lined with children's drawings and books. Behind the desk sat a tall woman with warm eyes and a steady posture. Principal Sharon Ellison stood as James entered, offering a firm handshake. "Mr. Bennett," she said with a curious smile. "You've stirred up quite a bit of conversation in town over the past 48 hours. "I seem to do that unintentionally," James replied, managing a sheepish smile. "Thank you for seeing me." She motioned to the chair across from her. "Please, let's talk." James cleared his throat. "I'm here because I made a promise to a student named Anna. She asked me to take her to the father-daughter dance. I said yes." Ellison nodded slowly. "Yes, Amanda mentioned you might come. I understand there are rules. Legal guardians only. I respect that. But I'm asking no. I'm appealing to your humanity to make an exception." Ellison leaned back, folding her hands. "We've had cases like this before. It's always tricky. There are other students in similar situations raised by aunts, older brothers, sometimes even foster care. We try to make space for them too." "I'm not trying to be special," James said. "I just don't want her to be left out. Not again." Ellison paused. "You're not her legal guardian, not even a family friend until 2 days ago. Some parents may raise concerns." James looked her in the eye. "Some already have. I've heard the whispers. He's doing this for the cameras. He's just after a headline. But that little girl doesn't care about headlines. She cares about having someone who shows up. And I intend to show up." Ellison studied him. Her gaze softened. "She told her teacher yesterday. I think I found someone who sees me," Ellison said, voice quieter. "That's not something an 8-year-old says lightly." James's throat tightened. "I'll allow it," she added. "But you'll need to complete a volunteer clearance form, basic background check, and you'll need to attend with a teacher or staff member who can vouch for you if any concerns arise." "Done," James said instantly. "Whatever you need. I'll speak with Amanda and let her know. But Mr. Bennett, this kind of thing, it matters. To them. To all the kids who feel like they don't belong. You show up for one, you're showing up for many." James nodded. "That's the idea." Outside, he felt a rush of cold air against his skin, crisp and sharp, like the start of something new. For the first time since arriving in town, he felt steady in his purpose. Not driven by grief, not haunted by the past, but moved forward by something clear, present, and deeply human. But not everyone shared the sentiment. Later that afternoon, as James stopped by Rosie's diner to drop off the signed forms for Amanda, he felt the shift. A few heads turned as he entered. A couple at the corner booth whispered. A man at the counter, dressed in a janitor's uniform, muttered just loud enough for James to hear. "Can't buy everything, even a daughter." James paused mid-step. He turned, calmly, and offered a polite nod. "Good afternoon." The man didn't respond. Amanda approached from behind the counter, eyes apologetic. "You okay?" "I've heard worse," James said. "Doesn't make it right, but I didn't come here to be liked." She gave a tight smile. "You came to be something else." "Yes," he said. "Something better." They sat for a few minutes while Amanda finished her shift. James helped Anna with her spelling homework, and she proudly read him a poem she had written about hope and sparkles. Every word chipped away at the armor he'd spent a lifetime building. Before leaving, Anna pulled him aside and whispered, "I told my teacher you're coming. She said you must be special." James bent down and looked into her eyes. "I don't know about special, but I promise I'll be there." She grinned. "I'm gonna wear my silver shoes too." That night, back at the hotel, James laid out his favorite gray suit and shined his black dress shoes. He picked out a silk tie the color of starlight, remembering how Ava had once said, "Daddy, wear this. It makes you look like you belong in the sky." He chuckled softly, then caught his reflection in the mirror, and for the first time in years, he saw a father not of blood, but of heart. Outside, the small town dimmed under the soft hush of dusk, but inside James Bennett, a quiet fire was starting to glow. The morning of the dance arrived with a golden hue in the sky, but the air inside Monroe Elementary was tense. In the teacher's lounge, Quiet conversations buzzed between staff members sipping their coffee. Principal Ellison sat at her desk, reviewing James Bennett's volunteer clearance paperwork one final time. Everything checked out: clean record, verified identity, references attached. Still, a knot formed in her stomach. Not because of James himself, but because of the whispers already making rounds among the parents. At 9 a.m., the first call came. "I don't understand why an outsider gets to walk in and pretend to be someone's father," said Mrs. Green, mother of a fourth grader. "There are plenty of kids who need attention. Why is this one getting special treatment?" Ellison remained calm. "Because no child should be left behind if someone wants to stand by them. That's what our community is about." But by midday, the doubts had spread. Some parents threatened to withdraw their children from the event. Others posted vague concerns on social media. When did we start letting strangers play parent? Who's really watching out for these kids? By the time James arrived in the afternoon to drop off Anna's small silver shoes polished and repaired at his expense, the tension was unmistakable. He stepped into the school office and was greeted with polite, stiff nods. Even the receptionist, who had smiled at him before, now seemed cautious. He handed over the shoebox and turned to leave, but Ellison called out gently, "Mr. Bennett, do you have a minute?" He followed her into her office and sat down, already sensing the shift in the room. "I want to be transparent," she began. "There's been some concern. Some parents are uncomfortable." James exhaled slowly. "Because I'm not her biological father." "Yes, and because of who you are, your visibility, your past." James's jaw tightened. "You mean my money?" Ellison didn't flinch. "And your story. Your losses are known. You're public. People question your motives. I didn't ask to be recognized. I only wanted to give a child one night she could remember." "I know. I believe that," she said sincerely. "But others don't know you. And fear, as you know, moves faster than truth." James sat back. He looked out the window at the playground where children ran, laughed, unaware of the adult world's suspicions. "I grew up in neighborhoods where kids would give anything for someone to show up," he said softly. "Now I do show up, and it's a problem." Ellison leaned forward. "Do you still want to attend?" James didn't answer immediately. His hands curled into fists on his lap. He thought of Anna's wide eyes, her promise to wear her sparkly dress and silver shoes. He thought of the way she held his hand at the diner, the way she looked at him like he was magic. "Yes," he said finally, "I do." That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Monroe Elementary transformed into a glowing vision of lights and laughter. Paper lanterns hung from the trees outside. A small red carpet led to the gymnasium, now decked in pastel balloons and silver streamers. Soft music drifted through the air as fathers and daughters arrived, hand in hand, dressed in their best. James arrived alone, wearing his gray suit and starlight-colored tie. As he stepped from his car, conversations hushed around him. He ignored the glances, the camera flashes from local reporters, the parents who turned away as he passed. His eyes searched only for one thing, and then he saw her. Anna stood at the top of the steps, her dress catching the light like 1,000 tiny stars. Her braids were tied with silver ribbons. The moment she spotted him, her face lit up like dawn. "You came," she breathed, racing down the steps. James knelt to meet her. "I promised, didn't I?" She nodded. "You look like a king," he smiled. "And you look like the most important person in the world." Together, they walked into the gym, hand in hand. The music swelled as other pairs danced. But as James and Anna stepped onto the floor, the room seemed to quiet, just slightly. Not with disdain but with awe. He didn't know the steps. She led him. They swayed slowly, her small hands resting on his arms, her cheek brushing against his chest. Around them, others began to watch, no longer out of suspicion but out of something else, something tender. Still, the moment could not last uninterrupted. A tall man approached from the side. Mr. Langston, a father of 3, arms crossed and jaw tight. "You don't belong here," he said under his breath. James looked at him, voice calm. "Neither did I in a boardroom at 18, but I earned my place. You're not her dad. I know that, but I'm here. And right now, she knows she's not forgotten. That's enough." Anna looked up, sensing the tension. "Is he mad at you?" she asked softly. No, sweetheart, James said, meeting Langston's stare. He just doesn't understand yet. Then, from across the room, a pair of hands began to clap. It was Mrs. Dalton, Anna's teacher, then Principal Ellison, then a few parents. The sound spread like a wave, folding over itself, rising into a full round of applause. Mr. Langston stepped back, face unreadable. James bent low and whispered to Anna, "Ready for our twirl?" She giggled and nodded, and together they spun slow, unhurried, defiant in grace. For that night, she wasn't the girl with no father. She was the girl whose dad showed up. After the final dance, the gymnasium slowly emptied, leaving behind the scent of vanilla punch, glitter on the floor, and the faint echo of laughter. James helped Anna retrieve her coat from the hook just outside the door. She leaned against him, her energy spent, but her face glowing with the unmistakable contentment of a dream fulfilled. "You were the best dancer," she mumbled through a yawn. He chuckled, wrapping the coat around her. "I just followed your lead." As they walked out under the moonlit sky, Amanda waited by her pickup truck, arms crossed and eyes shining. Her gaze flicked from James to Anna and back again. She didn't say anything at first, just stepped forward and gently tucked a curl behind her daughter's ear. "You are beautiful, baby," she whispered. Anna smiled, already dozing on her feet. James lifted her effortlessly and placed her in the back seat, fastening the belt gently. Amanda turned to him. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," James replied, brushing off his sleeves. "Just let her remember tonight." Amanda hesitated, then said, "You didn't have to stay after people started whispering. You could have walked away. Most would have." James gave a tired smile. Most didn't have their whole childhood wrapped in those same whispers. She nodded slowly. "You hungry?" He blinked. "What?" "I made meatloaf, my mama's recipe. You look like someone who needs something warm that didn't come from a 5-star kitchen." He didn't refuse. Half an hour later, they sat around Amanda's small kitchen table, a crocheted runner stretching down the middle, and a dim bulb casting soft light from above. The meal was simple: meatloaf, green beans, cornbread, but James hadn't eaten anything that tasted this honest in years. They spoke little during dinner. The silence wasn't awkward. It was full of thoughts, the kind neither of them had put into words in a long time. Afterward, Amanda poured 2 cups of tea and sat down across from him. "She never asks about him anymore," Amanda said quietly, staring at the steam. "Her father. She used to, at bedtime, at school. It stopped a couple years ago." James looked up. "Because she gave up?" Amanda's mouth tightened. "Maybe. Or maybe because she decided the world just wasn't going to give her an answer. But last week, when she saw the dance flyer, something cracked open again. She spent all weekend practicing steps in the living room with her stuffed bear. Told me she'd make a sign. Said she'd wait in the park." James said nothing, letting the ache settle between them. "She didn't expect anyone to stop," Amanda continued. "Honestly, neither did I. But you did." "I didn't mean to," James said. "I was just passing through. I wasn't even supposed to take that street." "But you did." He nodded. She studied him. "Why did you come back?" James swallowed hard. "Because she looked like someone I lost. And because no one should stand on a street corner asking for a father. Not in a world full of men who should know better." Amanda leaned back, staring at him with a new kind of softness. "You know, I don't have a lot of trust left. Been burned, talked down to, dismissed. I've done some of that myself," James admitted. "Used to think power was measured by how far you could rise. I forgot about what gets left behind." Amanda tilted her head. "And now? I want to show up. Maybe just for her. Maybe more." She hesitated, then asked, "Why her?" James looked down at his tea. "Because she reminds me what forgiveness looks like, and what hope still sounds like." They sat in silence again, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the faint sound of Anna snoring in the next room. Finally, Amanda stood. "I don't know what this is, or where it goes, but I know you gave her something she's never had. That matters." He rose too. "I'm not asking for anything in return." She gave a small smile. "I know." As James stepped outside, the night had deepened. The stars above seemed sharper, clearer. He walked to his car and paused, gripping the door handle. His phone buzzed in his pocket, another call from his assistant, probably asking when he was returning to Chicago. But for the first time in years, he didn't want to go back. He looked back at the small house with peeling paint and a screen door that squeaked. He thought of the girl sleeping inside, dreaming perhaps of more dances to come. And he thought of a life quiet, rooted, real. Maybe it was time to stop building towers. Maybe it was time to build something that could last. The Monday morning after the dance started like any other in the quiet town of Bellington. But for James Bennett, the day came with a sharp edge. He sat in the corner of a coffee shop downtown, nursing a cup of black coffee that had long gone cold. On the table before him lay 2 newspapers. Both carried his name. One headline read, "Billionaire crashes, school, dance publicity, or paternal instinct." The other, "Chicago mogul appears at small, town event with girl who's not his daughter." James closed the papers slowly. The sting was familiar. It wasn't the first time the world had judged him before knowing him. But this was different. This time, it wasn't his name on the lineage, it was Anna's. He reached for his phone, opened social media. The photos had gone viral. Him kneeling next to Anna in the park, the 2 of them dancing beneath the string lights. The moment Amanda kissed her daughter on the forehead while James looked on, smiling. Comments ranged from admiration to suspicion. He's just doing damage control for some scandal. Wait and see. Beautiful moment. Every child deserves to feel seen. Where was he when his own daughter needed him? James set the phone down and rubbed his temples. Then came a sharp vibration, another call. This time, his assistant's name flashed across the screen. He ignored it. Again. Instead, he walked out, deciding to clear his head. He needed answers, perhaps even permission to keep going. So he headed to the only place he knew might offer both. Monroe Elementary. When he arrived, kids were out on recess, their laughter filling the air like wind chimes. He spotted Mrs. Dalton, Anna's teacher, standing near the swings. "Mr. Bennett," she greeted him, a little surprised. "We weren't expecting you." "I was hoping to speak with Miss Ellison," he said. "Privately, if possible." She nodded, gestured toward the front office. "She's in. I'll let her know." Within minutes, James was seated across from Principal Ellison again. The smile she offered was thin. "I assume you've seen the coverage," she said. "Yes," James replied. "I didn't plan it. None of it. But it happened, and now I'm just trying to figure out what it means for Anna, for Amanda, for me." Ellison leaned back. "There's been noise. Calls from parents. A few school board members. One even questioned if we've breached a policy by letting you attend." "And have you?" James asked quietly. "No," she said firmly. "We followed protocol. Your background check cleared. You had Amanda's approval. You were respectful, kind, and above all you gave that girl something no rulebook can replicate." James felt a flicker of relief, but it was fleeting. "Still," she continued, "I need to ask, what are your intentions, Mr. Bennett? With Anna, with Amanda, because if this becomes something bigger, the scrutiny won't stop here." It took a long breath. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I know I can't walk away. I didn't expect this town. I didn't expect her. But she reminds me that I've spent too long being important and not enough being useful." Ellison studied him. Then, surprisingly, she smiled. "You know," she said, "the first time Anna ever read out loud in class, she whispered every word, like she wasn't sure she deserved to be heard. But this morning, she stood up and told the class all about her father for a night." James swallowed hard. She said, "He's not my real dad, but he danced with me like I was his real daughter. So maybe he's both." Silence fell between them. This time, not uncomfortable, but full of something heavy and sacred. "I'll speak with the board," Ellison said. "Try to cool the noise. But be careful. This kind of attention, it burns." James nodded. "I've been burned before. I'll survive." As he left the school, he passed Anna's classroom window. She sat at her desk, head tilted, doodling in the margins of her notebook. When she glanced up and saw him, her whole face lit up. She didn't wave. She just smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, one that said, "I see you too." But peace wouldn't last long. That evening, back at his hotel, James received an email marked urgent. It was from the Board of Trustees at his foundation in Chicago. The message was brief. Your public appearances have raised questions among our donors. We advise stepping back until further notice. We must protect the foundation's reputation. There it was, the price of showing up. He stared at the screen for a long time. They had supported his work for years, followed him through mergers, losses, public grief. But now, one moment of genuine connection on Danson, they questioned his motives. He paced the room, looked at the suit still hanging by the door, the silver tie, thought of Anna's silver shoes, of Amanda's meatloaf, of the way the town had started to change him, not with protest signs or speeches, but with presence. Then he picked up the phone and called Amanda. She answered quickly, breathless. James, everything okay? No, he said, voice low, but I'm learning that's okay too. She waited. I'm thinking of staying, he continued. Not just for another visit, really staying. For Anna, maybe for more than Anna. Amanda didn't respond right away. Then come by, she said finally. We'll talk. James hung up, heart pounding not with fear, but with clarity. The cost was real. The judgment would follow. But maybe, just maybe, the reward would be worth it. James stood on Amanda's porch that evening, the air thick with summer's fading warmth and the scent of fresh-cut grass. The screen door creaked open as Amanda stepped out, a towel slung over one shoulder, hair damp from bathing Anna. I thought you might not come, she said softly. I almost didn't, James replied. But then I remembered her smile. Amanda stepped aside, letting him in. The house was modest, lived in scattered toys, a flickering lamp in the corner, and the hum of cartoons drifting from the back room. She's brushing her teeth, Amanda said. Then she'll be in bed. You want to say goodnight? James hesitated. Would that be okay? Amanda nodded. She's been waiting at the window every 10 minutes since you called. He followed her down the narrow hallway. Anna's door was half open. The little girl stood in pink pajamas covered in stars, her feet tucked into bunny slippers, her braids loose around her shoulders. When she saw James, she ran to him. You came? James knelt, arms open. She dove into his embrace, wrapping her small arms around his neck. You said maybe, she whispered, but I kept hoping it would be a yes. It's a yes, he said, voice thick. She looked up. Forever, yes? James searched her eyes so full of innocence, of quiet hope. He didn't have all the answers, but what he had, he could give. Let's just start with always here, he said gently. Anna grinned and motioned toward her nightstand. I saved something for you. He followed her gaze. Resting there was a plastic tiara and a beaded bracelet. I was going to give you the tiara, she said, giggling, but you don't have princess hair. James laughed. That's fair. Then the bracelet's for you, so you don't forget to come back. He took it carefully, sliding it onto his wrist. It was too small, but he wore it anyway. I'll wear it every day, he said. Amanda appeared in the doorway, watching them silently. After Anna slipped into bed, she walked James back to the kitchen. She never gives her things away, Amanda said. Not since her last friend moved away without saying goodbye. James looked down at the bracelet. Then I'll never take this off. Amanda poured them both a glass of lemonade and sat down. Earlier today, she began, I was at the grocery store. Someone I've known for 10 years asked if I was selling my daughter's story for attention. James didn't speak. His fingers tightened slightly around the glass. I told her no, Amanda continued. But it didn't matter. The look was already there. James sighed. They think I'm here to fix my image, to buy redemption. Amanda leaned in. Are you? He met her eyes. No, I'm here because of that little girl who thinks a bracelet can keep someone close. Silence stretched between them. Not heavy, just honest. Amanda broke it first. You know she's going to ask soon. About next year. About birthdays. About school projects and hospital forms. I know, James said. I've been thinking about that too. She hesitated. James, this isn't a fairy tale. There's no magic wand that turns you into her father just because you showed up once. I know, he said again, but I've got time, and I've got love. Maybe that's enough to start. Amanda looked away, blinking rapidly. She deserves stability. I can give that. She deserves honesty. I'll give that too. And what about you? Amanda asked quietly. Do you know what you're stepping into? This town, this life, it's not your world. You don't get chauffeured here. You don't shake hands and have problems disappear. Here, we hang on with our nails. James looked around the kitchen, the frayed rug, the slightly chipped counters, the smell of baked apples still lingering in the air. Then he looked at Amanda. I don't want to escape this, he said. I want to earn it. Amanda exhaled, deeply. Then you should have this. She stood and went to the small hutch near the window. From a velvet pouch, she pulled out a silver pendant, simple, heart-shaped, worn but polished. This was my mother's, she said, pressing it into his hand. She gave it to me when Anna was born. Told me that no matter what happened, as long as I wore it, I'd never forget who I was fighting for. James turned it over, saw the word faith engraved in tiny letters. She'd want you to have it, Amanda whispered. If this becomes more than a moment. James closed his hand around it, eyes wet. It already has. That night, as he drove back to the hotel, the pendant in his palm and the bracelet on his wrist, James realized he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Not because he had to, but because, at long last, he wanted to. This wasn't about pity, or guilt, or even grief. It was about presence, about finally being the man he wished had walked into his own life when he was 8 years old. And now, maybe just maybe he was. By Thursday morning, the video had over 4 million views. The image of a powerful man kneeling before a girl in a princess dress, whispering something only the two of them could hear, had become internet currency. On talk shows, newscasters speculated about James Bennett's sudden reappearance in the public eye. Was it rebranding? A redemption tour? Or something more profound? In Bellington, the speculation took a different shape. Inside a local diner, the clink of silverware was drowned by chatter. I don't know, murmured Carl the barber. I just don't trust people who show up out of nowhere with that kind of money. He danced with that child like she was his own, said Betty, a retired nurse. And he didn't need a camera to do that. The cameras came to him. But he ain't from here, Carl shot back. What's he want with our town? At the corner booth, quietly sipping her coffee, was Principal Ellison. She didn't speak. She simply listened, her mind already heavy with the school board's emergency meeting scheduled that afternoon. Back at Monroe Elementary, Anna sat in her classroom, doodling hearts and swirls on the corner of her math worksheet. Her focus was thin, her mind far from numbers. Her friends now treated her like she was part celebrity, part mystery. Some whispered in awe, others with suspicion. You think he's really gonna stay? Asked Jasmine, the girl at the desk beside her. Anna shrugged. He said he would. My dad says rich folks always say things until they don't get what they want. Anna didn't answer. She looked down at the bracelet missing from her wrist. She'd given it away. On purpose. That meant something, didn't it? After school, Amanda picked her up, her face tight with concern. What's wrong? Anna asked. Nothing, baby. Just a long day. But Anna knew that look. It was the look her mom got when a bill came too soon or the car made a noise it wasn't supposed to. Did someone say something about James? She asked. Amanda hesitated. Some people are talking. That's all. Anna crossed her arms. He didn't do anything wrong. Amanda pulled into their driveway and turned off the engine. I know that. You know that. But some folks, they see things different. Anna didn't respond. She just got out of the car and walked up the porch steps, slower than usual. Inside his hotel room that evening, James stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. You're making this harder than it has to be, his assistant was saying. They're threatening to pull funding from the housing initiative. If they want to walk, let them walk, James said flatly. You're putting everything on the line for this one thing, this one girl. She's not a thing, James snapped. She's a person. She's a life. There was a pause on the other end, then a softer voice. James, I get it. But if you keep pushing, you might lose more than money. James stared out at the town, the small park bench where he'd first seen Anna, the school just down the road, the church bell tower that chimed on the hour. I've lost before, he said. This time, I'd like to win for something that matters. He hung up before his assistant could reply. That night, James showed up at Amanda's door again. She looked tired, hair tied back, a smudge of flour on her cheek. You cook? He asked, smiling. She laughed, despite herself. Baking for the church fundraiser, banana bread. He lifted a brown paper bag. Well, I brought Chinese. Thought we could balance the healthiness. Amanda stepped aside. Come in. As they ate, Anna sat beside them, legs swinging under the table. I want to bring James to school one day, she said. Amanda looked at her. Why, honey? So he can read the story we wrote together. The one about Mr. Dragon and the sad castle. James raised a brow. That sounds dramatic. It is, Anna nodded seriously. But it has a happy ending. Amanda smiled. We'll see what the school says. After Anna went to bed, Amanda and James sat on the porch with mugs of tea. The air was quiet, soft with crickets. They want you to back off, Amanda said. The board, some parents. I figured. And you're not going to. James shook his head. Not unless you ask me to. Amanda looked out over the lawn, the moonlight casting shadows through the trees. I won't ask you, but I need you to understand something. I'm listening. She's never had anyone stay. Not friends, not neighbors, not family. You're the first person who made a promise and didn't flinch. James leaned forward. Then I'll keep doing it, one day at a time. Amanda reached into her pocket and handed him a folded note. She wrote this tonight. Said I could read it, but I think you should. He unfolded the paper. In childish handwriting were the words, Dear Mr. James, thank you for dancing with me. Thank you for not walking away. Thank you for being real, even when people say you're not. If you ever get sad, remember I have enough happy for both of us. James held the paper for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and placed it into his wallet, next to a worn photograph of his own daughter, the one he'd lost long ago. Amanda watched him quietly. She believes in you, she said. James nodded, his voice low. Then I have no choice but to live up to it. It was the day of the school assembly, a long-standing tradition at Monroe Elementary, where students presented art projects, music performances, and stories they'd written themselves. It was meant to celebrate creativity, community, and belonging. But this year, the auditorium buzzed with more than the usual excitement. In the corner of the back row, James sat in a pressed gray suit, his signature composure betraying traces of tension. Amanda sat 2 seats over, her expression unreadable. Whispers moved like currents around them. That's him, the billionaire. I heard he wants to adopt the girl. They say it's all for PR. But in the second row, Anna sat cross-legged beside her classmates, gripping a laminated copy of her story, Mr. Dragon and the Sad Castle. She wore a blue cardigan over her dress and had braided her own hair that morning, too tight in some places, too loose in others. But she was proud. Mrs. Dalton took the stage. Good morning, everyone. Today we celebrate stories written by our very own students. Some of these stories are whimsical, some are brave, and some remind us of the kindness we all need. She paused. Our next reader is Anna Ellison. Anna stood, her paper trembling slightly in her hands, and walked to the microphone. She looked out at the sea of faces, some smiling, some waiting. Her eyes found James. He nodded once. She took a breath. My story is called Mr. Dragon and the Sad Castle, she began. It's about a dragon who used to be scary, but then he got lonely. So he flew far away to find a place where no one was afraid of him. And one day, he saw a castle with only one window lit up. Inside, there was a little girl who felt like she didn't belong anywhere. Her voice wavered. She looked down, then up again. They didn't speak the same language, but when she cried, he cried too. And when she danced, he danced with her. And even though he couldn't fix the castle, he promised to never fly away again. She looked over at James. And that was enough. The room was silent. Then came the first clap, then another. Then all at once, a standing ovation. James stood slowly, his eyes misty. After the assembly, a few parents came over, offering small nods, a smile, cautious but sincere. That was beautiful, one said. Your girl has heart. James smiled. She's teaching me more than I'm teaching her. But just as the warmth began to spread, Principal Ellison appeared, her expression tight. James, could I speak with you in my office? Amanda's face tensed, but James nodded. Of course. Inside the office, 2 school board members were already seated, Mr. Harris and Miss Doyle, both in their 60s, both with the air of people accustomed to giving more instructions than they received. Mr. Bennett, Harris began, we appreciate your involvement and generosity, But we need to be clear. About what? James asked. Doyle leaned forward. You've become a symbol, and that carries weight. Some positive, yes, but also controversy. James folded his hands. Because I danced with a girl whose father was never there? Because now there are expectations, Harris said. We've received calls. Some parents are uncomfortable. There's talk about media exposure, influence on school decisions. This is no longer just about a child and a man who cares. James stood. Then let me be clearer than you are. I'm not here to run your school. I'm not here to make headlines. I'm here because that girl Anna deserves someone in her corner, and I don't care what it costs me. You should, Doyle warned. Because when the donors and trustees start talking, when this turns into a spectacle, you'll find doors closed you didn't even know existed. James looked down at the pendant around his neck, the one Amanda's mother once wore. He touched it gently, then met their eyes. I've walked through more doors than you can count, he said, and not one of them felt as meaningful as that auditorium did today. With that, he turned and walked out, the door shutting behind him with a soft but final click. Out in the hallway, Amanda was waiting. Well? She asked. They want me to disappear before I become a problem, James replied. And what did you say? I said the door they're so worried about can close. I'm not going anywhere. Amanda's shoulders relaxed, just a little. Then come to dinner. Anna wants to make spaghetti. That night, as they sat around the table, Anna slurping noodles, Amanda laughing at a story James told about his own fourth-grade spelling bee, James felt something anchor in him, something real. Not fleeting, not borrowed. A family. Later, after Anna went to bed and the dishes were cleared, Amanda handed him a small box. What's this? He asked. Open it. Inside was a key. Ordinary, silver, no inscription. It's to the back door, she said, just in case. James looked up, emotion flickering across his face. Are you sure? I am, Amanda said softly, because I've seen how she looks at you, and because I've seen how you look at her, like you're already home. The Friday before the father-daughter dance arrived with a sudden drop in temperature. A crisp breeze swept through Bellington, rattling the leaves along the sidewalks and tugging gently at the bunting the school had started hanging for the big event. Balloons in pastel colors lined the gymnasium doors. Inside, tables were set with paper tablecloths and glittery centerpieces made by the students. But behind the shimmer, tension still lingered. James stood at the edge of the gym, dressed in a charcoal gray suit, his eyes scanning the nearly empty room. The decorations were cheerful, but the energy wasn't. Some teachers offered polite smiles. Others avoided his gaze altogether. The principal hadn't returned his last call. Amanda stepped beside him, adjusting the collar of his jacket. She's nervous, she said. She's afraid you won't be allowed to go in with her. James exhaled slowly. I'm afraid of that too. She's waiting in the library with Mrs. Dalton. If they say no, we'll figure it out. The doors opened behind them. In came parents with their daughters' dads in tucked-in polos or button-downs, girls in lace dresses and sneakers. Laughter rose in gentle waves, but every so often, eyes flicked toward James. He felt the stares, the weight of unspoken questions. Then the school board arrived. Harris and Doyle, followed by Principal Ellison, who looked more weary than stern this time. The room hushed. James stepped forward. Ellison raised a hand. Mr. Bennett, could we speak outside? Amanda placed a hand on his arm. No matter what they say, you're still her father tonight. He nodded and followed Ellison through the side door into the cool evening. She turned to him, eyes softer now. The board voted, split down the middle. James waited. Ellison smiled faintly. I broke the tie. He blinked. And? She nodded once. You're in. A rush of breath escaped him. Thank you. Don't thank me, she said. Thank Anna. She made a case for you better than anyone else could. Told the board that if they had rules for who could love a child, then the rules were broken. James chuckled, wiping the corner of his eye. She's got fire. She's got faith, Ellison corrected. In you. Don't let her down. He didn't. Inside, music had begun to play softly. Children danced with their fathers under dim lights and hanging stars. James made his way to the library where Anna sat on a cushioned bench, her dress a cascade of silver tulle, a tiny tiara perched on her head. When she saw him, her eyes widened. You made it? I did, he said, kneeling beside her. You ready? She nodded fiercely. "I've been practicing." He offered his arm, and together they walked down the hallway. As they entered the gym, the chatter quieted. All eyes turned to them. For a long beat, no one moved. Then came the soft clap of a child's hands. Jasmine, Anna's classmate, another joined in, then another, until the room pulsed with applause. James looked around, stunned. A few parents remained still, skeptical. But most had let go of their doubts, at least for the night. They watched as Anna led James to the center of the room. A slow song began to play an old tune, something soulful. James placed a hand on Anna's shoulder and held her tiny hand in his. They began to dance. Her steps were uncertain at first, but his steadiness anchored her. Slowly, they found a rhythm. "You're really here," she whispered. "I'm really here." "Forever?" He smiled. "As long as you want me to be." Halfway through the song, she leaned her head against his chest. "Then don't go anywhere." He held her close. "I won't." The song faded, replaced by another. But the magic held. For the rest of the evening, James stayed by her side whirling, laughing, even attempting the awkward group dance with a line of other dads and daughters. Amanda watched from the sidelines, a warm smile tugging at her lips. Principal Ellison stood nearby. "You were right," Amanda said. Ellison didn't look away from the dance floor. Number Anna was. As the night wore on, James was approached by one of the more vocal parents, Mr. Trenton, a lawyer known for his bluntness. "I didn't vote for you to be here," he said. James nodded. "I figured. But I watched you tonight," Trenton continued. "And my daughter asked me why more dads don't dance like you do. That's when I realized. Maybe I've been too quiet in my own life." James met his eyes. "It's never too late to start dancing." Trenton smirked. "I'll remember that." As the event wound down, children gathered their crafts and leftover cupcakes. Parents bundled daughters into coats and whispered goodbyes. James and Amanda walked Anna to the car. She was sleepy, her tiara slightly askew. "That was the best night ever," she mumbled. "Mine too," James whispered. Back at Amanda's house, after tucking Anna in, James sat alone in the living room. Amanda returned with 2 mugs of tea and handed him one. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "I've been in rooms worth billions, but none have made me feel as rich as tonight did." She smiled. "Then you're exactly where you're supposed to be." He looked at her, his voice quiet. "I never danced with my own daughter like that. I never got the chance." Amanda touched his hand. "Now you have one." That night, James didn't return to the hotel. He stayed on the couch, the sounds of a peaceful home all around him. For the first time in years, sleep came easy. And outside, the stars hung low, like they, too, had leaned in to watch the dance of a man and a little girl who had found each other just in time. Spring arrived gently in Bellington, ushering in budding trees, open windows, and the return of the Saturday farmers' market. The square brimmed with townspeople carrying canvas bags filled with fresh produce, homemade jam, and gossip that traveled faster than the breeze. But even amidst the scent of cinnamon bread and blooming tulips, it was James Bennett who caught most of the attention. He didn't arrive in a Bentley anymore. He drove Amanda's old truck, the one with the dented fender and country music preset on the radio. He wore jeans and a white shirt, sleeves rolled up. Some still glanced at him sideways. Others offered shy nods. A few even greeted him by name. James no longer felt like a visitor. He was becoming part of the rhythm. That morning, he stood beside Anna at the booth for the Books for Every Child fundraiser. She wore a yellow sundress and stood on a milk crate, helping customers count change with exaggerated concentration. "You missed 50 cents, he whispered. "No, I didn't," she grinned. "I was giving the lady a discount." He laughed. "You run a hard bargain." "Ah," she looked up at him. "Is this what daddies do? Give a discounts? No help with stuff, like school or chores or booths." He knelt beside her. "Yes, it is. And sometimes we also bake cookies badly, forget how to braid hair, and try too hard to tell jokes." She smiled, wide and content. "You're doing good." Amanda walked up carrying lemonade. "Better than good," she said, handing James a cup. "He's the reason we have 20 more books than last week." I just asked a few friends to donate," James replied modestly. "Friends?" Amanda teased. "James, You called in a favor from a senator. He shrugged. All for a good cause. But the biggest change came the following week, at a school board meeting that, for the first time in memory, drew a full crowd. Principal Ellison stood at the front of the library, facing an audience of parents, teachers, and community members. James sat near the back, Amanda beside him, her hand resting lightly on his. Ellison cleared her throat. Thank you all for coming. Tonight, we're voting on a proposal brought forth by the Parent Community Committee. A proposal that, if approved, would provide mentorship programs, tutoring, and scholarship funds for students who've lost one or both parents. Murmurs buzzed through the crowd. Ellison continued. This proposal comes from a place of recognition that not all families look the same, but all children deserve the same chances. James stood. Ellison nodded toward him. Mr. Bennett would like to say a few words. James walked to the front, every eye on him. He cleared his throat. I grew up without a father, he said. Spent a lot of years believing that made me less than. I chased success thinking it would fill that gap. But success isn't the same as love, and nothing replaces showing up for real, day in and day out. He glanced at Anna, sitting beside Amanda, beaming with pride. When I met Anna, I didn't know I was meeting my future. She taught me what it means to be present, to be seen, to be enough. I want every child who's missing someone to know they aren't alone. A pause. Then, I've started a foundation, the Anna Grace Project. It will provide after-school programs, mentorships, and scholarships for kids like her, kids like me. Silence, then applause. Not polite or hesitant, genuine, full-bodied applause. The vote passed unanimously. Outside, under the streetlights, Anna raced down the sidewalk and into James's arms. He lifted her easily, spinning her once before setting her down. We did it, she cried. He knelt, placing a hand over her heart. No, sweetheart, you did. That night, at Amanda's house, they celebrated with pizza and sparkling apple cider. Anna made paper crowns for them all. James wore his proudly until bedtime. Later, as Amanda loaded the dishwasher, she looked over at him. You really named it after her? He nodded. She's the reason I woke up. Amanda leaned against the counter. So what now? James hesitated. I was thinking, maybe we take the next step. Her brow lifted. What step? I want to adopt her, he said quietly. Not just be a presence. I want to be her father in every sense. Amanda's hand trembled slightly as she set down a glass. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. She studied him, then walked over and placed her hand in his. Then let's talk to her together. They found Anna in the living room, curled under a blanket, watching a cartoon with one eye already drifting closed. Amanda knelt beside her. Sweetheart, she whispered, we have something to ask you. Anna opened her eyes slowly. Is it about ice cream? James chuckled. Not tonight. It's more important. Amanda nodded. James wants to know if you'd like to be his daughter. For real. Not just for dances. Forever. Anna sat up. Like, adoption? James's voice was thick. Yes. Only if you want it. Tears welled in her eyes. She threw herself into his arms. I already thought you were my dad. He held her tightly, unable to speak. Amanda wrapped her arms around both of them. In that moment, they weren't pieces trying to fit, they were whole. And outside the window, spring pressed on, quietly blooming a new chapter. A year passed. The seasons turned with quiet dignity in Bellington. Summer had brought porch swings and lemonade, autumn had dusted the trees with gold, and now spring returned just like before. But everything was different now, especially for Anna. She stood at the front door of her school, a little taller, more confident. Her hair was tied back with a silver ribbon, and the same tiara from last year rested proudly on her head. She clutched a small envelope in her hand. Inside, it was a handwritten invitation to the father-daughter dance-only this year. She wasn't asking for a father. She already had one. James waited near the pickup line in Amanda's old truck, honking once to get her attention. Anna ran across the pavement and hopped into the front seat, beaming. You ready? He asked. For what? She grinned. You don't remember? We're running the dress rehearsal today. You're helping me with decorations, remember? Anna slapped her forehead. Right. I forgot. He smiled. Good thing you've got a dad with a good memory. At the school gymnasium, balloons were being inflated, music equipment tested, and student volunteers hurried back and forth with folding chairs and glitter glue. But unlike last year, James wasn't just a guest. He was the event chairman now, the founder of Father for a Night, a program that connected volunteers with children who didn't have a father figure to attend events like this. He and Anna had spent months helping organize it. "Mr. James," called out a boy in suspenders and sneakers, "do I put the photo booth next to the snacks or near the back wall?" James looked at Anna. "What do you think, boss?" he asked her. "Back wall," she said with authority. "People will want to get pictures before their makeup melts from dancing." James gave the boy a thumbs up. Back wall it is. Throughout the afternoon, they hung banners, inflated more balloons, and helped the younger students decorate the tables. James watched Anna float through the room with ease, directing others, cracking jokes. She had grown into a leader not because anyone told her to, but because she believed in the magic of second chances. As the sun dipped behind the school, James walked out to the parking lot for a moment of quiet. He leaned against the truck, hands in his pockets, gazing at the fading sky. "You okay?" Amanda asked, stepping out to join him. He nodded, just taking it in. "You've done something incredible," she said. "We did." She smiled. "Number, you led with your heart. You gave her something I never could, a sense of being chosen, and not just by chance, but on purpose." James looked down. "I never knew how empty I felt until she filled the space." Amanda took his hand. "She's lucky, and so are you." Back inside, the gym was buzzing again, this time with music, laughter, and the unmistakable joy of children who felt seen. Dads, grandfathers, uncles, and even older brothers danced with little girls in sparkly dresses. Volunteers paired with students whose families couldn't attend. There were awkward steps, loud laughs, and the occasional tear wiped away with a napkin. Anna took James's hand as the lights dimmed and a soft tune filled the room. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "May I have this dance?" she said, mimicking a curtsy. He chuckled and bowed slightly. "It would be my honor." They danced. This time, there were no whispers, no questioning looks, only admiration and gratitude. As they twirled, a small boy nearby, no older than 7, stood alone in the corner, watching. His shirt was tucked neatly into his pants, and he clutched a small cupcake in his hand. Anna noticed. "Hold on," she whispered to James. She walked over, knelt beside the boy, and asked gently, "Hi, what's your name?" "Elliot," he mumbled. "Are you here alone?" He nodded. Anna smiled. "I was too, once. Would you like to dance?" Elliot looked unsure. "I don't know how." Anna extended her hand. "Neither did I, but someone taught me. Come on, I'll teach you." Elliot took her hand. James watched, eyes brimming again, as his daughter guided the little boy to the dance floor. They moved clumsily but happily. More kids joined in. Soon, the floor was a patchwork of giggles, shuffles, and sways. Amanda stepped up beside James. "You see that?" He nodded, overcome with emotion. "I do. She's got your heart," she said quietly. "No," James replied. "She had it from the beginning." As the night ended, Principal Ellison took the stage. "Tonight," she said, "we celebrated not just family, but the power of community, of choice, of love. And there's no better example of that than Anna Grace Bennett, and the man who became her father not by obligation, but by courage." Applause erupted. James and Anna stood together, holding hands. Around them, families clapped and cheered. Afterward, as they walked out under the stars, Anna looked up. "Dad?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Next year, can I help plan it again?" James smiled. "Next year you'll be in charge." She grinned. "Deal." They stopped at the car, looking back at the glowing gymnasium. "You know," she said, "I think we should always dance, even when there's no music." James squeezed her hand. "Especially then." And just like that, under the soft hum of streetlights and the comfort of knowing exactly where they belonged, father and daughter twirled once more, letting the world spin on around them, knowing that this time, the dance would never end. Summer in Bellington arrived in waves of heat and humidity, but the real furnace was happening behind closed doors. James Bennett's foundation, the Anna Grace Project, was gaining momentum. Scholarships approved, mentorships matched, reading programs launched. Yet growth comes with growing pains. It began with a letter handwritten, polite but firm from a local parent, Mrs. Calloway, requesting an audience. She feared the foundation was shifting priorities, taking funds from essential academic programs to feel-good gestures. Soon, more letters followed, some anonymous, condemning James for injecting money where it didn't belong. At the next school board meeting, tensions flared. The gymnasium was packed, parents spilling into the hallway. Amanda held James's hand tightly, standing beside Principal Ellison. Mrs. Calloway rose first. Her voice shook, but she spoke clearly. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, Mr. Bennett, but this town already struggles. Our teachers are underpaid, our classrooms overcrowded. Is it fair that our academic budget depends on a billionaire's whims?" A chorus of murmurs rose, some in agreement, some shaking heads. James exhaled. He stood and walked to the stage, nodding respectfully at Ellison and the board. "I hear you," he said. "And you're right. This community deserves more than donations tied to headlines. It needs lasting solutions." He paused, looking at the rows of parents. "That's why I started the education endowment within the foundation. Funds dedicated to teacher salaries, literacy programs, and facility upgrades. Not just events, but sustained investment." He felt doubt flicker in the crowd. One of the teachers, Miss Rivera, spoke next. "Leave it to you to have a plan before we even knew what the question was," she said, sincerity unmasking the critique. "Thank you." The room exhaled. Momentum shifted. Parents leaned forward. Questions turned practical: timelines, allocations, accountability. Next week, James and Ellison presented a revised budget at the school district office. They walked trustees through spreadsheets, test scores, timelines for library renovation. For the first time, community members saw their dollars, not just gestures. Amid this effort, Anna watched quietly from the sidelines. She'd volunteered to read at summer camp and decorate the revamped library entry. On her 9th birthday, James took her and Amanda to Cleveland, her dream trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, proof he was investing in her world beyond Bellington. But trials still came. A fire broke out in the old library wing, an accident. Investigators concluded, from old wiring. Flames scarred walls, destroyed books, left the building trembling like it was grieving. Anna held James's hand as they watched the charred interior the following morning. Smoke clung to the beams, the smell raw in their lungs. "Will we lose everything?" Anna asked, voice small. James knelt before her. "Not everything. We'll rebuild. We'll fix this. Together." They organized a town-wide book drive. James arranged trucks, donors, volunteers. Amanda baked cookies for the library staff every morning. Children delivered stacks of picture books from home. Within 2 weeks, the public school library, already struggling before, had more books than before the fire. People began talking again, this time with soft pride instead of harsh judgment. One evening, as James walked Annie home from the rebuilt library, she tugged at his sleeve. "Dad?" He paused. "Yeah, honey?" The streetlight caught her eyes in quiet reflection. "So when are you going to adopt me for real?" A looked down, heart squeezing. He'd planned to wait until the fall semester, to complete paperwork, to let everything settle, but she deserved more than waiting. He knelt. "How about we start the process this month? Make it official before I leave at the end of summer?" Her face glowed. She threw her arms around his neck. "Yes." They hugged under the swaying elm tree, quarters of light gleaming around them. That night, after dinner, James pulled out the adoption paperwork. They all read it together, Amanda offering her signature, James signing honorably, Anna watching each stroke as if witnessing a promise becoming real. When the papers were signed, James held Anna's hand. "You're my daughter. Always have been," she whispered. They popped a bottle of sparkling cider. The cork popped. They toasted. Amanda cried tears of relief, of gratitude, of hope. In that moment, they were more than family making a statement. They were healing the town, bit by bit, under summer stars. Trials had come, questions, flames, skepticism, but their bond, and their belief in each other, had proven stronger than doubt and brighter than any headline. The courthouse in Bellington stood like a sandstone sentinel at the edge of Main Street, modest but proud, just like the people who passed through its doors. On this particular morning, the air buzzed with a quiet energy. Not the kind that came with criminal trials or heated disputes, but something softer, deeper. A different kind of justice was being done today. Inside, Anna sat between James and Amanda, on the wooden bench outside courtroom 2B, her patent leather shoes swinging above the floor. She wore a pale blue dress with a white sash, and in her lap was a small plush Barold, worn at the ears and well-loved. "You nervous?" James asked, nudging her gently. Anna shook her head. "Nope. Are you?" James gave a small laugh. "Maybe a little." Amanda squeezed his hand. "You're doing great, both of you." The bailiff opened the door, nodding toward them. "Judge Reynolds is ready." They entered the courtroom together. It wasn't grand, no polished mahogany or towering ceilings, but it didn't need to be. What mattered was the woman behind the bench. Judge Martha Reynolds, silver-haired and steady-eyed, known in town not only for her fairness but her ferocious love of family. "Good morning," she said, adjusting her glasses. "We're here today for the adoption hearing of Miss Anna Grace, to be placed legally in the custody of Mr. James Bennett, with the full support of Miss Amanda Hayes. Is that correct?" James nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Reynolds looked at Anna. "And how do you feel about this, young lady?" Anna stood a little taller. "I feel like I'm finally where I belong." A smile tugged at the corners of the judge's mouth. "That's a good answer." The process was brief: papers submitted, questions asked, statements confirmed. But the moment it became official, when the gavel came down and Judge Reynolds declared, "The court recognizes Anna Grace Bennett as the legal daughter of James Bennett," time seemed to pause. James let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Amanda wiped away a tear. Anna threw her arms around James, whispering, "We did it." Outside the courthouse, a small crowd of neighbors, teachers, and friends had gathered, unaware of the timing but ready to celebrate nonetheless. Someone brought balloons. Someone else passed out cupcakes. A handmade sign read, "Welcome to the family, Anna." The sun warmed their faces as Anna stood on the courthouse steps, hand in James's, grinning like the world had just opened its arms. That afternoon, back at the house, Amanda laid out a picnic blanket under the old oak tree. James grilled burgers, while Anna drew stars in sidewalk chalk on the driveway. At one point, she stood and approached James, holding a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" he asked. "A poem," she said shyly. "I wrote it for school, but it's really for you." "Oh." He unfolded the paper and began reading aloud. "I once was a shadow looking for light, a heart half full in the middle of night. But then came a voice, and arms open wide, who showed me that love doesn't need to hide. Not born from blood but stronger still, a promise made, a dream fulfilled. I found a dad not just by name but in his heart. I found my flame." James was quiet for a long moment. Then he knelt, pulled her close, and said through a cracked voice, "That's the most beautiful thing I've ever been given." Anna smiled, then whispered, "Can we celebrate with root beer floats now?" Later that week, a reporter from the Bellington Gazette stopped by the community center, requesting an interview. She had heard about the adoption, the foundation's efforts, the rebuilt library, and the dance that had started it all. James hesitated at first. They had never done any of this for the press, but Amanda encouraged him. "Tell your story," she said. "Let others know what's possible." During the interview, the reporter asked, "Mr. Bennett, what inspired you to create Father for a Night?" He looked at Anna, who was across the room helping organize donated books. "She did," he said. "A little girl in a princess dress holding a sign in the park. That moment changed my life. Not because she needed saving, but because she reminded me that I did." The article ran the following Sunday with the headline, "From Millionaire to Dad, James Bennett's Unexpected Journey." Photos of James and Anna smiling at the dance, the library reopening, and the courthouse steps filled the page. But what touched readers most was a quote at the bottom, attributed to Anna. "Being a daughter doesn't mean you have the same last name. It means someone shows up again and again and says, 'You matter.'" The town of Bellington shifted again after that, not because of one man or one girl, but because of the ripple effect of compassion, the courage to commit, and the belief that no one is ever too far gone to start over. That evening, James tucked Anna into bed. She clutched her bear and looked up at him. "Dad?" "Yes, sweet pea. Can I still call you James sometimes?" He smiled. "Of course, as long as I still get to call you mine." She giggled and closed her eyes. He turned off the lamp, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Good night, my daughter." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees like a lullaby, and in that house, a house once too quiet, too big, too full of echo, there was only peace. The Bellington Community Garden was the unlikely setting for James Bennett's latest lesson in fatherhood. Rows of bright vegetables and fragrant herbs filled the morning air with promise. Here, volunteers gathered on Saturday mornings to plant, weed, and learn that real growth took time. Anna wandered ahead on the gravel path, arms full of seed packets. She looked every bit the daughter of a man who learned to slow down. James followed, his hands filled with gardening tools, heart full with anticipation. "Did you pick basil?" he asked gently, stepping beside her. She grinned. "And tomatoes, and carrots, even though those take forever." He chuckled. "Everything worth growing takes forever." She nodded solemnly, like family. Her seriousness broke his heart in the best possible way. Before he could respond, Mrs. Riverath middle school science teacher turned gardening mentor approached. "Good morning, Bennett team," she called. "Today we'll start transplanting. That'll teach patience and attention." James crouched beside Anna, showing her how to space the seedlings. The sun warmed them, and Anna's small hands handled soil with surprising skill. "Like this?" she asked. "Perfect," he said. "Just a little deeper, roots need support." She watched him closely, brows furrowed with concentration. "Mama says you helped her decide this garden needed to be a place for every family," Anna said, voice soft through the soil. James looked at Amanda, who had arrived with coffee and sat on a bench, watching. She nodded. He met Anna's eyes. "Every family needs a place to blossom," he said. "I wanted this to be ours to build and care for something lasting." The morning flew, weeding, watering, laughter broken by the occasional question, "What if the plants don't grow? What if we water too much?" James answered each with calm assurance. "If they don't grow, we plant again. That's how it works, just like in life." At lunchtime, families gathered under the shade of a big oak. Amanda passed lemonade, while the local bakery provided pies. Teachers shared stories of students who'd never had a quiet place to study. Parents talked about community partnerships, and in the middle, James watched his daughter soak it all in. After lunch, he knelt beside Anna again. "Ready for your next task?" he asked. She nodded eagerly. "Here's the plan. You and I will host garden story time next week. You can read your poem again if you want." Anna's eyes grew bright. "I want to," she whispered. "But can I bring dragon puppets?" He smiled. "Absolutely." As the afternoon wore on, clouds gathered, rain threatened, volunteers hurried to cover seedlings. James helped collect tarps while Anna raced in, came out, and chased puddles. Finally, droplets fell. He held her close as rain splattered around them. "You sure you're okay?" he asked. She nodded, soaked but happy. "It's just water." He hugged her tighter. "Yes, baby, just water." By evening, the sky cleared. The garden glowed under the soft light of lanterns strung in the trees. Families helped tie the raindrop chairs into neat rows. Amanda found James beside the tool shed. "You okay?" she asked. He looked at the growing beds. "We planted something that needed more than money to grow." She wrapped an arm around him. "You're making more than memories here. You're building roots." They walked into the gathering together. Anna stood at the front, waiting. She read her poem about the dragon, the castle, the tears, and the dance, and the audience listened, rapt. When she finished, there was applause. Then she invited children to come forward for puppets and stories. James sat next to Amanda, proud beyond measure. Afterward, they walked home through the soft night. Anna ran ahead, barefoot on wet grass. At home, as he tucked Anna into bed, she looked at him with sleepy eyes. "Thanks for today," she said. "For everything." He kissed her forehead. "I'll always show up. I promise." She closed her eyes. "I know." He lingered a moment, thinking of how far they'd come and how far they'd grow. As he walked to the kitchen, Amanda met him there. "She's finally rooted," she said softly. He nodded. "And so am I." They toasted with tea, standing together in quiet solidarity. Two people who had chosen each other, chosen family, and chosen the slow, deep work of growing something good. Outside, the garden slept under moonlight, rows of seedlings fed by rain, hope, and love. And inside that small house, father, daughter, and mother felt the future stretching before them, deep, wide, and alive with possibility. The summer sun settled into gold as Bellington prepared for its annual River Festival, a celebration of the community's connection to the winding river that coursed just beyond the town's edge. Canoes lined the banks, food stalls popped up along the paths, and laughter wove through the breeze like wind chimes. But this year, the festival would mean more for James Bennett and his family. James and Amanda arrived at the township pavilion early to help set up. Anna skipped ahead, carrying a canvas tote labeled "Story Time by the River." She was in charge of reading to kids gathered on blankets under the old oak tree. James carried a stack of children's books donated through the foundation. Amanda carried bottled water and snacks. As they worked, James realized how much this festival symbolized their journey, bridges of care spanning the distance from loss to belonging. By mid-morning, a group of families gathered on the grass. Anna stood confidently in front, gripping her favorite copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. Behind her, James and Amanda arranged seating and refreshments. "Once there was a toy rabbit," Anna began. Her soft voice carried through the shade. She paused at the right moments. Kids leaned in. Parents watched with empathy. James caught Amanda's eye and smiled. He watched their daughter become a leader, teaching kindness through stories. After story time, Anna handed out bookmarks tied with silver ribbons, the same ribbon from the father-daughter dance gown, and taught her audience how to care for things that matter. The afternoon brought canoe races. James joined two teams, one with high school youth, another with middle schoolers. A float with banners promoting the Anna Grace Project drifted by, cheering on participants. Mid-race, James capsized in the shallows. He emerged, spluttering. Kids cheered, laughter rippling across the water. He climbed back in, waterlogged but smiling, and paddled to finish, winning nothing but joy. Anna ran into his arms at the shore. "Dad, you looked like a fish at first, but then you paddled like a champ." He hugged her tight. "That's what happens when you don't quit." Later, the mayor stepped forward to present James with a plaque honoring his community leadership and dedication. The crowd applauded. James looked to Amanda and Anna, bowing humbly. At the food stalls, Anna insisted on ice cream despite their earlier plans. She chose rainbow sprinkles. Sitting by the riverbank, they watched the sunset chrome the water. "Dad?" Anna began thoughtfully. "Was there a river in Chicago where you grew up?" James shook his head. "Nope, no canoe races, just city streets and subways." Anna looked out. "I think I like our river better." He put his arm around her shoulder. "Me too, honey." Amanda joined them, holding 2 cups of lemonade. "To our river," she toasted. "To our family," said James. They toasted, listening to the river's soft murmur as daylight faded. As stars peeked out, Anna opened her arms. "Come dance with me, Dad." James stood, hesitated, then nodded. They danced barefoot in the grass, feet guided by moonlight. A father and daughter swaying between sky and water, carrying memories and forging new ones. And in Bellington, under the quiet applause of the moving river and the watching stars, hope took another step forward, one bridge at a time. Before the first snowfall, Bellington transformed into a quilt of evergreens, glowing icicles, and warm lights reflecting from windows. The annual winter festival arrived with carolers, steaming cocoa, and the promise of old-fashioned magic. This year, though, it would mean more than tradition. It would mean giving back, in a way that mattered deeply to one small family. James and Amanda stepped into the community hall, breath visible in the chill, the scent of pine wreaths mingling with gingerbread. Tables lined one side, each bearing handmade gifts, knitted scarves, painted birdhouses, jars of jam. Through the center hung strings of white lights, their glow sparkling in powdered coats and scarves. Anna darted toward a table under the sign that read, "Winter Wishes." It held brown paper bags, each tagged with a child's wish: warm coat, holiday meal, a new school backpack. She held her mother's hand, eyes bright. James wrapped an arm around them. "Did you choose 2 wishes?" Anna nodded. "One for Meso, the new puppy doesn't get lonely, and one for someone else." Amanda smiled respectfully at James. He squeezed her hand gently. They found their names. Anna picked new gloves and boots, and the other wish, a baby sister's Christmas dress. They chose a bag, tucked it under their arms. then spent the morning helping children wrap gifts and write letters to Santa. Afterward, they joined the festival's main event carol singing around the huge pine in the town square. Families gathered, voices lifted in gentle chorus. Silent night, holy night. Wrapped in Anna's scarf, James felt the warmth in his chest deepen. Around him, the town joined in. Mothers and fathers, grandparents and children, all swaying by starlight. Anna glanced up at him and whispered, "This is perfect." He smiled. "It's our family's song." When the final verse ended, the mayor lit the tree's lights. A cascade of stars arced across the evergreen, shimmering above them. Cheers and applause filled the night. But not all was calm. A sudden frost cracked across the square lights flickered. A heavy wind swept through, knocking snow off branches with a thunderous chime. Panic rippled as people stepped back. James moved instinctively, pulling Anna close and guiding others toward the sheltered porch. Amanda stayed by his side. Under the door's eaves, they watched the chill pass. Ice swept branches and churned snowdrifts. When lights returned, relief roared through the crowd. Children clapped. Phones flashed. A moment of fear turned to gratitude. Anna looked up at James. That was scary. He held her tight. "Thank God we were together. Can we finish the song?" James nodded. "Let's do it." Hand in hand, they stepped back into the light. The choir began again. Hark, the herald angels sing, and the crowd joined in, voices steadier, stronger. After the singing, they headed inside for warm drinks. Amanda brought Anna cocoa while James prepared hot cider, adding cinnamon and an extra splash of caramel. Their table filled with people neighbors they invited. James overheard someone say, "Look, Bennett family giving, caring, real." He glanced at Amanda and smiled softly. By the hall's fireplace, Anna stood with Mrs. Rivera and several younger children, handing out badges that read "Festive Helpers." James watched her confident, kind, beautifully rooted. He thought of the winter ahead, school projects, foundation meetings, holidays, life. For the first time, he didn't feel its weight as burden. Later that night, as they returned home, the first snowflakes fell gently. Anna stepped out and caught one on her tongue. "Dad?" "Yes? Do you think there's a song for snow too?" James picked her up. "Yes, a lullaby for winter." She smiled sleepily. "Sing it?" He sat by her bed, snowflakes drifting past the window. He sang softly a lullaby his own mother once sang for him about snow like feathers, dreams like blankets. Anna's breathing slowed, eyes closed. He kissed her forehead. As he backed out of the doorway, Amanda watched him face reflecting lantern light and gratitude. He wore his coat, Anna's scarf, and the silver pendant around his neck. "Home," he whispered, and in that peaceful hush, the first snowfall dusted the world a quiet promise painted in light, family, and the simple miracle of being together. The new year had arrived in Bellington with a quiet promise. Snow had melted, leaving the town's streets bright and damp, glinting in the pale sunlight. New beginnings were whispering in every budding tree and freshly painted mailbox. But inside the Bennett Hayes household, something deeper was stirring, a promise fully realized. It was a weekday morning, and the house buzzed with routine. Anna sat at the kitchen table, humming as she tied her sneakers. Next to her, her backpack, now adorned with patches from school clubs, stood ready. James made pancakes, flipping each golden circle with practiced care. Amanda arranged a stack of Anna's lunchboxes beside the fruit bowl. "Happy first day of 4th grade, superstar," James said, placing a pancake on Anna's plate. She reached up to hug him. "Thanks, Dad." He hugged her back. "Make them laugh." Amanda watched them, her smile warm. "You'll do great." Then, quietly, she slipped a folded envelope into Anna's hand. "From Mrs. Rivera." Anna unfolded it and gasped. "A scholarship?" Amanda nodded. "The reading fund, for your summer project." Anna stared at James. "You said I could lead the summer story camp again." He grinned. "You did better than lead it, you owned it." Anna's face lit up. "I'm gonna tell them about the dragon." He ruffled her hair. "That dragon's gonna grow wings." The school run was brisk. James walked Anna to the front door of Monroe Elementary alongside Amanda. Teachers greeted them. Parents exchanged polite nods. But everyone paused to say hello to the daughter of James Bennett. Anna waved, confident and kind, their pride shining through. Inside the classroom, she slid into her seat, next to Jasmine. Their notebooks lay open. Anna tapped her pencil and leaned back as the first bell rang. James and Amanda stood outside, hands clasped. He whispered, "Ready?" She squeezed his hand. "As ready as we are." They walked away together, two adults bonded in purpose to head to the Anna Grace Project's new building. What had started as a small foundation in a borrowed conference room had grown into a proper community center. Blue-trimmed windows, a mural of dancing children, and a newly added room for counseling. They passed the mentor match office and headed toward a modest conference space where a meeting was already underway. Teachers, parents, mentors, and even students sat, chairs arranged in an oval. At the head of the table was Principal Ellison. Beside her stood Jason, a guidance counselor holding a folder. James and Amanda settled in as Ellison rose. "Thank you, everyone, for coming today. As many of you know, we're launching the second year of our mentorship program, and I'm proud to say the first group saw measurable improvements not just in grades, but in attendance, self-esteem, and community engagement." She gestured to Jason, who began passing out reports. "These are summaries from mentors and mentees. Attendance is up by 40%, behavior incidents are down, and most importantly," he smiled at the room, "connections are growing." James leaned forward, scanning the pages with Amanda. Moments later, his eyes settled on a short note at the bottom. "Thank yous from several students, including one from a boy in 3rd grade. Because of my mentor, I started to read before bed again. I feel important." He swallowed, then looked at Ellison, who nodded and stepped aside. "It's your turn," she said. James stood. He placed a hand on the laminated mural. 11 chapters ago, I met a little girl with a sign in a park. That chapter changed my life. But it wasn't just my story, it was hers. Hers, and every student in this room who needed someone to say, "I see you, and you matter." He paused. "This building, this program, is a bridge, a promise, and none of it would matter without each mentor, teacher, parent, and student here. We built this together." He turned to Amanda. She squeezed his hand. He turned back to the group. "My daughter is growing up in this house not because of whose blood flows in her veins, but because of the blood, sweat, hope, and second chances we all share. Every time we show up, every time we believe, we make a legacy that outlasts one night, or one book, or one dance." He stepped down, taking a seat near Amanda. Questions followed, about funding, partnerships, volunteer training. Plans were made for summer camp, an annual gala, and campus expansion. The room hummed with purpose. On the ride home, Amanda looked out the window as they passed the garden, the riverfront, and Main Street buzzing with evening traffic draining home. She turned to James. "You did it," she said softly. James reached over and took her hand. "We did it." Behind them, Anna bounded in, waving a book report form. She flopped on the couch next to them. "Dad, Mama, look a plus." They cheered. Amanda hugged her. James kissed her forehead. He thought of all their chapter Spain and promise, obstacles and breakthroughs. He thought of avalandal of empty chairs. He thought of the cold snap. He thought of Anna's poem and the town's slow acceptance. He looked at Amanda. "This is the family we chose." She rested her head on his shoulder. "And this is the legacy we're planting." Anna leaned in, sleepy. "Can we read the dragon story tonight?" James chuckled. "Absolutely." He scooped her up and carried her to her room. Amanda followed with the book. As they settled in, he began reading, his voice teaching warmth, their hearts echoing connection. Outside, the town shimmered under street lamps, bridges, rivers, festivals, and gardens, but nothing matched the glow inside that small bedroom where parent and daughter created their own legacy, page by page, love by love. And in Bellington's quieter corners, where hope had once been fragile, a movement pulsed onward, rooted in the simple truth that presence trumps everything and a family shows up for one another, always. The story of James and Anna teaches us that family is not defined by blood, but by love, presence, and the courage to show up when it matters most. It reminds us that one act of kindness, a man answering a little girl's silent plea, can heal old wounds, build new beginnings, and inspire an entire community. In a world often divided by indifference, The true legacy we leave behind is the compassion we extend and the lives we touch with sincerity and grace.